Morning, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Liam's Daily Reviews here at Northam's Haunted Book Factory. Today is a sad one. Today, hold on to your tissues because this is probably right up there as one of the saddest books I've ever read. It is Jodi Picoult's The Pact. Now, a friend of mine, we were talking about sad things yesterday, and it just occurred to me, that's a story I was always going to review one day, so while I was thinking about sad, depressing things, I might as well review it. So The Pact by Jodi Picoult came out in 1998. When you open the first page, it has a quote by a man named Christopher Marlowe. That quote says, "Whoever loved that loved not at first sight." I read this when I was 20. A friend of mine begged me to read it, and because all I was doing was reading scary stuff, she wanted me to broaden my horizons. So I read it, and I'm a hopeless romantic, so that quote right at the start, I was like, oh, and that's really cute, you know? The story very quickly got very sad. So it's a story about Chris and Emily, teenagers who have lived next door to each other. Their family have been friends for 18 years. They've grown up together. They're in love with each other. Excuse me. It straight away begins with them embracing, him lying on top of her, and then you hear a gunshot. Then we meet the parents. You know, they're out to dinner. They end up going home, falling asleep, and then a midnight phone call wakes them up by a police officer saying that their children have been injured. Now, this story, it's about a suicide pact. Now, the more we delve into it, because Emily dies and Chris doesn't, we find out lots of stuff. So we find out Emily has depression. Something happened to her when she was a little girl. She was always bright and happy and full of life until this something happened to her. And Chris is completely at a loss as to why she's taken this dark turn. And she comes to him one day and says, "I want to kill myself." Now, this is where I take issue with the book. There are a lot of things I take issue with this book, and the second time reading it is where I realised this. When I was 20, I was like, wow, this is just brilliant. This has just blown me away. I'm never reading Jodi Picoult again, though, because it was so sad. But I'll give her props for her brilliant writing. But so, if my partner came to me and said she wanted to kill herself, or he wanted to kill himself, I would try to seek therapy. Straight away, I wouldn't be able to keep that secret. I wouldn't want my partner to kill themselves, and you know, whether they hated me for it or not, I would seek them help. Whereas Chris doesn't do that. He keeps it to himself, and he just constantly thinks, I can stop her when the time comes. I'm sure I can. I can talk her out of it when the time comes for us to do this suicide pact. That's, naive teenager or absolute tool. It's like, I felt like shaking him by the shoulders and saying, what the hell, man? Get her help. So she was abused when she was a child. And it spirals her into depression. And, studies have shown this does happen. Depression, and sadly leads to suicide. Throughout the entire second half of this book, it's because this book, it goes back and forth from past to future. Past to present. So we see Emily's descent into her depression and into her suicidal thoughts, and the abuse that she suffered, which thankfully is actually quite short. Some people might say they didn't delve into that enough to sort of show why she wanted to die. Where I'm quite happy that it was just a half a page of a scene. That'll do for me. But the way the book, Jodi Picoult, she romanticizes the suicide, almost like Chris was doing her a favor by putting a bullet in her. Like if something like that so terribly happens to you, then what, death is the only answer? Like, I don't know, I disagree. I mean, every situation's different, but it's like, oh, he done such a wonderful thing because he loved her. It's like, no, you're still teenagers. There was still time. You could have saved her life. Therapy works. Sometimes, a lot of the time. It's just my opinion, but I definitely would have got her therapy. And another thing, it's the pact, so straight away you're thinking it's a suicide pact. where it's really a mercy killing. But Chris wasn't suicidal at all. But he seemed to go along with what she wanted just a little bit too easy for flimsy reasons. So it does show you the negative side of suicide by the family grieving and the disintegration of the family, but sort of not enough. It's really just romanticizing on the Chris done the right thing, which I don't think he did the right thing. So it's really deep topics, you know, really full on stuff. You're holding your breath the whole time you're reading this book. I think the story's engrossing. You really want to know what's going to happen with these characters, and I think that shows you how good a writer Jodi Picoult is, because the decisions these characters are making are stupid. They're not real. It's like, what the hell? Yet it's written so well, so poetically, and so beautifully. You're like, what a great writer. So it's like, I don't know. I fault her, but I don't at the same time. It's strange. How I feel about this book is weird. So, you know, her characters are one-dimensional, yet you care for them. It's like a conundrum there. So, and also, I think there's probably too much sex in this book. You know, for being a book about teenage suicide, it's kind of like, oh, okay. It's kind of like, you know, yuck. I don't want to romanticize about sex when you're on such a sad, dark path with this book. So yeah, read it, you know, if you want to cry. Read it if you want to be upset for weeks. Read it if you want to have nightmares in a really bad way. But if you also want to check out Jodi Picoult, I think it's probably one of her best books. It shows you how good a writer she is, but the subject matter is just really hard to handle. And that's it. That's my review on The Pact by Jodi Picoult. Tune in tomorrow when I review a really favourite book of mine. I'm going to go back to the scary stuff. I'm going to be reviewing Watchers by Dean Koontz, one of his best books ever. So don't forget to like and subscribe. If you have a book that you want me to review, leave it in the comments section down below, and take care of each other and read some good books.